In this Year 3 and 4 humanities lesson are using the resource. Their teacher, Jo Hooper, has planned the session on the principles of Islam so that children can take turns to work on the laptop or PC.
Between the words. Okay, sweetheart. The program the children use and we use is a program called Texties, which is a it's got word processing. The worksheet the children are on. What's the time?
One thing we want to develop very much at the moment is to make sure that the computers are being used right throughout the curriculum. The teachers are confidently using the ICT suite to deliver skills teaching, but we're not seeing the computers in the classroom being used as much as we feel they should be. We want to see that happening across the board so that there's always something happening using the computer in the room at any one time.
So Joe is the first of you to do his little homework presentation, and this is it, and he has prepared his on PowerPoint at home. So you're going to listen really, really nicely, Sarah, and you're going to listen by looking as well. Okay, Joe, I'm really looking forward to this.
This is my holiday presentation. I went to America, Norway and Prague. It was in summer and it was very hot, and there was loads of theme parks. And
one of the bonuses for the school has been the positive effect of ICT on the confidence of some of the pupils.
Joe loves ICT, he is enthusiastic about it, and he's really enjoyed putting together this PowerPoint presentation. He's done the presentation in front of the whole school almost without nerves, which is really unusual for him because he's normally quite a quiet boy who wouldn't normally volunteer to stand up and do something like that in assembly. So that tells me, you know, that ICT is a very good thing for children, and it can help them increase in their confidence. Well, what do we do, everyone?
I'm confident that all the children are receiving the basic core ICT curriculum. I'm not yet seeing the computers being used right across the curriculum throughout the day. That's our next push. That's what we're working on this year.
Hardware, training and curriculum development. In all these areas, St Philip's is now moving forward. But there is one more area where the school's beginning to make use of ICT: assessment. One of the benefits to flow from the strategy has been changes in the way the school assesses its pupils. Like this software helping infant teachers assess the skills of pupils coming into the school.
We still feel it's important to have an assessment of the children as soon as they come into school. The PIPS computer-based assessment is superb, and it gives us very good feedback as to how the children progress through their first year in school.
Can you point to a butterfly? Look at this picture. Can you point to a yacht?
The programme lets the child complete the assessment with the help of an LSA, while the rest of the class can carry on with its work.
We also use something called Snapshot, which allows us to take a snapshot of children's maths development at any one time. And we've only just begun to use that, but we're already finding it gives us a very good picture of where the children are in terms of their development.
Just take a little bit of time. There you are. Do you enjoy that? Good. OK, you can go back to your classroom, sweetheart.
They use this piece of maths assessment software with older children. Classes complete the questions at regular intervals, and it allows the teachers to assess and overcome individual weaknesses.
So Daniel was in class 11, shows me that he's at a high level 4. Now, from this, we'd like to actually move him on to try to get a level 5, because that's our job. We need to look at the topics and see where he needs the extra help, which is in number applications, which is word problems, for example. That's how we can help there. So we would print these off, we'd have a look at them all and move children on from there. It makes maths fun. It makes assessment fun. They don't consider it as an assessment, they just come in and do a task. And that is brilliant, because then they're not all strung out because they've got a piece of paper in front of them. So from that point of view, it's brilliant.
So, from a damning Ofsted report and special measures 2 years ago, this primary school has begun to change the way ICT is perceived by governors, parents, pupils and teachers. It still has some way to go, but what are the lessons so far?
Take your time. Don't try and do it all in a hurry. Expect that it's going to take several years to provide a full implementation of everything you want. Plan your development plan accordingly. The head teacher of the school needs to have a real vision for ICT and a real desire to see it developed in the school. Without that, you're not going to end up with the budget, the resources or the direction for the subject. Keep staff with you. Support them, train them, encourage them, but don't force the pace beyond what they can cope with. But recognise they will get there and help them.
Don't forget that all this week's programmes are repeated in easy-to-recall blocks in Catch-Up Weekend. You can also visit our website, www.teachers.tv, for more information.
Get up and go every weekday morning from 8 till 12.
I'm about to explore those big questions.
For the very best and pupil programmes for use in class.
So the whole thing eventually sounded like this.
The perfect support materials for teachers.
This is probably one of the most famous nonsense poems ever.
Featuring a whole range of subjects, including music and art.
Imagine a world without any colour.
History and science.
I hope they know what they're doing.
Pupil programmes on Teachers TV. For details, check the website.
Okay, class, see you next week. Simon, can I see you for a moment, please? Have you got them?
Yes, miss.
There's an easier way to get Teachers TV. Visit get.teachers.tv for digital television offers on Freeview from Comet and from Home Choice, Kit, Telewest and Top Up TV.
This is Teachers TV. You're watching the Secondary Zone. The next hour is dedicated to secondary ICT. Money for ICT, Find It, and Money for ICT, Spend It are followed by personalised learning with ICT 1 and 2. But first, two schools reveal their different approaches to sourcing funds for ICT in Money for ICT, Find It.
In this programme, we visit two successful schools to look at the similarities and differences in their approach to funding ICT. To put this into context, we'll be taken on a guided tour of each school to gain an insight into their current ICT resources and how they're being used. The first school is Waldegrave School for Girls in the London Borough of Richmond, whose approach to funding is mainly government-sourced.
Morning. Welcome to Waldegrave School. I'm Jenny Michelle, Deputy Head, and I have an oversight of IT here. I'm not the coordinator of IT. So I'd like to show you around some of the features that we have. We're not particularly well equipped, but we're trying to use things imaginatively. So to show you some of the areas that we've been developing.
The second school is Greenswood College in Essex, where they've taken an enterprising approach to funding.
Hi, welcome to Greenswood College. My name's Mike O'Sullivan and I'm the Vice Principal. We're going to take you on a tour to see how ICT is used in the school.
ICT is fundamental to Greenswood College and it's based on a number of core principles and values we have for the students here.
ICT is absolutely critical in our school now, both in terms of teaching, learning and administration in the school. We are learning, I think, to use ICT as another tool in terms of teaching and raising achievement of our pupils.
Young people nowadays are MTV kids. They have got mobiles, they've got PDAs, they've got computers. They're used to sound, music, action. So it's a way of engaging.
We try and identify the things that we want to target, how we're going to fund that and what our success criteria will be.
The building is actually in 3 stages and some of our problems have been because we're living in a building which was designed well before computers.
We're a truly comprehensive school and we use ICT quite innovatively.
We every year undertake a comprehensive curriculum review. We look at what's required at each key stage 3, 4 and 5. And as a result of that, we put together what we call our ICT strategy. And that will identify all the hardware that we need, it will identify what softwares that we need, it will identify any upgrades.
We've commissioned what we've called a health check, a sort of audit health check, really on our hardware and our network support, because what we want to know is whether we've got the right kit, whether it's sort of wired up correctly, ready to move forward to the next phase, whether we've got enough support staff with the right technical expertise.
Like every other school, our needs are far outweigh the money that we have to buy them, so we then have to prioritise.
One of the problems that most people in my position will find, I'm sure, is that they are working in one school and they're not quite sure how they measure up against other schools, not just locally but nationally.
Right, we're going into a science lab where we are going to use some data loggers to look at a very simple experiment to see if some different liquids have the same boiling points. Some of the equipment that we're using is data loggers, which have been funded for the science department by a grant from the Wolfson Foundation. We received £21,000 from them, and the grant was match funded by the governors, which meant that the science department had about £40,000 invested into it a few years ago. At the college, every teacher obtains a laptop, and that's funded by CVAS, which is the Virtual Education Action Zone, and the school receives a grant every year, and so we put that grant together, and every 3 years we replace these laptops. And then as part of the package, each teacher has a laptop and access to a data projector.
Okay, so we're going to look in one of our larger classrooms, which actually doesn't have any children in it right now. Now, this is a big classroom, and even if we wanted to put a cluster of computers in here, it wouldn't be big enough. So our strategy is to try and have portable equipment, because particularly in maths, they don't need a computer for the whole lesson often. They might just want to use it for, say, 20 minutes. All the maths rooms have got an interactive whiteboard. They've been funded by the London Challenge.
When we're looking at the ICT budget for the whole of the financial year, we do break it down into various headings. One is for the admin system, which pays for the licences and the hardware, primarily for the administration, so it's not really to do with teaching and learning. Then we will have another fund which we call the ICT department.
The way that we calculate the amount that we require to spend on ICT is that our network manager will put in a bid every year, as all heads of department do in line with the college's policy. And we look at that bid, and we look at in the holistic terms how much money have we got globally to spend on the school, and of course ICT will form a part of that.
Obviously there are some fixed costs. Every year we have to pay for certain things like licences for the school's information management systems that we use. So there's fixed fees that really don't vary very much from year to year. Because we don't have a huge amount of technician support in-house, like many schools, we buy in to someone else. So that's another few thousand fixed costs.
The way that we go about costing our upgrades and cost of repairs is that we have historical costs for that, and so we can tend to roll that forward. But again, because we have our in-house expertise, a lot of the problems that crop up, the hidden costs, if you like, that you can't budget for when servers crash or for whatever reason computers die, which they tend to do, then the in-house team can repair those.
When we're looking at best value for money from tenders, obviously what we would do would draw a specification so that we give each company exactly the same specification, you know, say 25 PCs, installation licenses and the spec of the PCs. So we'd get them in, we'd put them in some sort of grid, and we'd look first of all whether they'd fulfilled the spec, and some of them ruled themselves out instantly.
Well, the way we went about introducing, for example, our teacher training room was we put out 3 or 4 tenders.
This is a room which we adapted around about 2 years ago, which was funded through the training school status.
We don't always go with the lowest price, because quite often there's a conflict between the price and the quality. And in that instance, we in fact didn't go for the lowest price one. We went for one which was sort of in the mid-range.
What we can do is remotely observe this lesson using this room here, which is our teacher training room. The benefit of this room is that I can observe a trainee teacher teaching a lesson normally, and the students aren't aware perhaps that I'm observing the lesson, then the lesson itself is more natural.
In the funding of ICT within this school, the first will be to reduce the total cost of ownership. by between 40 and 60%. We want to do that to enable an expansion of the use of technology. That might sound quite a contradiction, but we realise that we can't take any further percentage out of our main school budget to fund ICT. That's helped us to be more entrepreneurial. We moved very early on into leasing, and we've increased those leases over the years, and we've probably reached the end of the level we can get to. The reason we did the leasing was because we want to accelerate the programme.
We have not gone down the leasing route because we've found that it would tie up future resources that up until this year we were not confident we would have. This year is the first time we've had a 3-year budget, so we can make more confident arrangements over 3 years. The main sources of funding in this school are, first of all, our devolved budget, which pays for everything, and that's just under £4 million. The majority of that, in fact nearly 80%, goes on salaries, which leaves very little to fund all the other things. And the two largest budgets outside of salaries are building, maintaining the fabric of the building, and ICT.
The main source of funding into this school are, of course, the government grants. This year, Grant 31 will be very extensive. It will look at the broadband provision, it will look at hardware provision, it will look at software provision through the e-learning credits.
We have standards funds. Less and less they are ring-fenced, but we dedicate quite a lot of the standards fund to buying ICT equipment, and of course we had a lot of New Opportunities Fund money for a couple of years for training. That's now dried up. We had laptops for teachers, which was another source of ICT funding, and because we're both a science college and a leading edge partnership, we get additional funding from the DFES, and we've invested heavily from those sources. That comes to about 200,000 a year.
This is coming into our learning resources area. This was part of the new build, originally designed as a library, but obviously things have moved on. Originally we had 15 PCs, like one of the rooms you've seen downstairs, so that the girls always had to work in pairs. That's not ideal, so we did that 1 year, and then out of our next year's school budget we increased it so that we've now got 30, so they can all work individually, which obviously is much more satisfactory, and put in the projector. We've sort of been building up gradually. We tend not to sort of put all our eggs in one basket.
Where we're going to now is our Lifelong Learning Centre, which I suppose a lot of schools would call their library. But what we've decided to do is use this in the community as well as in school, and it's open to the public in the evening and at weekends. There are normally a couple of classes going on in here, but this is an interesting one because this is in fact a converted gym. Our own site staff converted it about 4 years ago from a gym into a library, and the money that we saved we used to purchase the ICT equipment which is in here.
Funding's always been a challenge to us. Delivery of the actual services via the network is always a major challenge. As the ICT grows within a school, so the technical support, the technical knowledge, the number of file servers, the local area network, the maintenance of the computer grows alongside, and the costs sometimes outstrip the income that we actually have.
There has been a lot of money invested in ICT by the government, there's no doubt about that, and in training for teachers to use ICT. One of the problems has been that that funding frequently dries up. It's available for a year or 2 years, and then the money is diverted into some other area. So it's very difficult under those circumstances to plan for continually upskilling the staff and replacing the equipment to the highest standard.
The college has been very entrepreneurial at extracting money from unusual sources. For example, we've had a grant of around about £21,000 from the Wolfson Foundation for the use of ICT in science, and we managed to extract £5,000 from the Ford Educational Foundation. Now, because we're a member of the Virtual Education Action Zone, the South East Virtual Education Action Zone, that was match funded. So the money from Ford's and the money from Wolfson was in fact increased. So we had £40,000 going in from the Wolfson bid, and we also had £15,000 going in from Fords. In fact, not a lot of people know that foundations give away the equivalent of £1 billion a year in funding.
Our entrepreneurial approach to generating income, fundraising, resourcing the ICT includes this team of people, the e-learning manager, the vice principal in charge of curriculum. Everybody is celebrated and rewarded for bringing that knowledge to the table, and without that knowledge we get left behind.
We do have plans to expand our ICT buildings. We're going to put an extra room in the corner of a courtyard which will be for ICT, and the money for that has come from our specialist schools bid.
We have 10 world-class outcomes. One of those is to ensure that the children are ICT proficient, that they have industry standard qualifications. They can move into the 21st century with confidence in their ability.
I think my advice to any head or school that's looking to spend wisely is to get the best advice that you can before you set off on a route that you can't pull back from, and to look at other schools, not just schools locally or similar schools, but the best schools.
We learn more from working with other schools probably than any other source. Looking at the innovation that some head teachers, some ICT managers are implementing in their schools, and we're constantly scanning reports from around the world.
Witness teaching at its most challenging.
The students within this group all have profound and multiple learning difficulties, but we differentiate the curriculum for each individual child.
Creative ways of bringing pupils out of their shell.
We use what's called a multi-sensory approach because we need as many ways as possible to give information to children.
Special schools. Check the website for details.
In this programme, we explore how two schools are trying to get best value for money from their ICT, hardware and software budgets. At Waldegrave School for Girls in Twickenham, their ICT spending plan is largely based on money from generally available state funding. At Greenswood College in Essex, they have raised substantial extra funding for ICT from external sources and from their specialist college status. Our guides will be Jenny Michelle, Deputy Head at Waldegrave School, and Mike O'Sullivan, Vice Principal at Greenswood College.
So we're now moving up to the corridor, which is mainly maths and English. We're trying to fit things into rooms that don't have enough space, which is one of our overriding problems.
So the school got technology college status in 1995. And that means that we get additional funding over and above our standards fund and our recurring annual grant to the tune of about £125,000 a year. That was really when the whole move to ICT started.
A person is now measured by the number of chips they carry in their watch, in their PDA, in their phones, in their wallet. It's part and parcel of 21st century life.
Network PCs, digital brain,
an interactive whiteboard,
wireless network,
wireless laptops,
internet,
hardware,
software.
The problem with ICT spending is that it's insatiable. The budget literally has to be trimmed down to what we can afford, but if I had the money, I could spend literally thousands of pounds on software, hardware, wireless networks and so on.
When we look at the IT budget as a whole, I suppose you could say the biggest percentage is actually spent on hardware, both new hardware, replacement. Sometimes we might just be buying monitors, sometimes we might be buying the whole unit.
The biggest cost by far is the cost of each of the units, the computers, which account for around about 50% of the spending.
A lot of the software we've managed in recent years to buy it through the e-learning credits, so we haven't had to use our school ICT budget or the standards fund for that.
How I've made the decisions and what we've purchased is partly guided by the amount of money we have available, although I know I can make a plea for buying something bigger. I feel if I'm going to go and ask for extra money, I have to be absolutely 100% sure that I definitely want to spend it on that thing. And it's quite hard to make a decision on something that's very, very expensive. So I've tended to buy a lot of cheaper, smaller pieces of software. So we have, you know, I don't know, 10, 15 applications that we use, and none of them cost more than £100 or so. And between those, we seem to find that we can actually do most of the things we need to do.
Now, what's happening in this class? We can, if you just want to have a quick look in here, we've got. Are you doing a presentation, Emma?
No, I'm just.
You're helping Mr. Drew, are you? Yeah. This is a history class. Mr. Drew is one of our lead teachers on ICT. This is year 11. I think they're probably doing revision on one of their units, is the history of medicine. But you can see there he's been using the interactive whiteboard with for and against arguments for better doctors and medicines.
Okay, so this is an area where we have access to the internet, and this is a French lesson going on here, and over here we have Mr. Cami. Mr. Cami is director of Key Stage 4. And students are using our online curriculum, which is housed by a company called Digital Brain. And what they're doing here is basically a group of fun exercises on vocabulary, some aspects of grammar, and hopefully this will have gains in their learning.
This is a Year 11 French revision lesson, and the students are accessing various websites where they can do past papers, they can do vocabulary exercises and access different GCSE topic areas. I also upload any sort of PowerPoint presentations that I do in class.
I do go to the Bet Show when I can. I didn't go this year, but I went last year, and I read articles and I talk to people in other schools. We don't actually have a lot of advice within the borough. I've never actually taken any advice from the borough on what to buy. So it's always been really working at a lower level and sort of trying out things.
One of the other things that we saw at the Bet Show this year is this little gadget, which obviously is much lighter than a laptop and much cheaper. And there is a wireless version, so we're having someone in next week to demonstrate this, because we think that for some subjects, perhaps English when they're just drafting things, or perhaps where they just want to do some research on the internet, this might be quite a cheap solution. It may not be. We're going to check it out. So that's something that we're currently investigating. I think a lot of people would think perhaps they're only applicable for primary schools, but we're quite interested in exploring this issue.
A successful ICT application is one, in my view, that not only saves time but primarily enhances the experience. If the user is enjoying using the application, then chances are they will also benefit in some way through their learning.
There are so many people trying to make money out of education. I think the word's gone round that schools have money, or that money's been made available, and every Tom, Dick and Harry that can make a piece of software is trying to sell it to us. And we have tons of flyers and communications coming through by email, by any route they think they can find. They're bombarding us, and it's very, very difficult to make sensible choices.
The cost is not necessarily proportionate to the outcome. A piece of software costing £20 or £30 might be just as good as something costing £200 or £300. So we just have to look at every case individually, and if we make a mistake, hopefully not make it again.
We really ought to be investing far more than we are on replacing our equipment and keeping it up to the sort of specification that increasingly our pupils are used to at home.
Some of the larger companies that currently we are using their system on our curriculum network, we have had a lot of hiccups. We've been to Bector because Bector has approved them, and obviously if Bector has approved them, then really they need to be following up as well, we feel.
When we go to select a new system, we usually use corporate companies to buy things off of, because we found that quite a lot of the companies that are fixed on the educational market aren't actually offering that much of a good deal, really, whereas corporate companies are a lot more competitive, so we tend to use them, and they usually give us an educational discount as well.
I think now the problem is not so much buying new kit or even the level of skills of our teachers. The teachers are now very keen to use it, but they can be very quickly put off using it if it's not working effectively in the lesson.
What we try and prefer to do is look at the systems that we've got, try and identify who's going to be using them and when, and then try and upgrade proactively so there never is a problem in the first place. So it's kind of seamless to the teachers. The systems just keep on working and working and working. For instance, for this year's budget, what I've done is I've identified a problem with our wireless network that needs upgrading. There was a company who put that in. Now that costs quite a lot of money, but I've recently been on some training for the wireless courses, and I've actually designed a new wireless network for the college.
There are lots of benefits of having in-house expertise. Not only can you carry the vision with those types of people so they know the direction that the school is going in, but they also have a vested interest in getting it right as well. So although there may be a cost in terms of their salary, in terms of the payback in terms of their input and expertise, I think that outweighs it.
We like to keep most of our work in-house to try and save money and have the skilled people here. And also that's quite good for the turnaround on fixing faults rather than having to go through a help desk and get solutions. Where we do most of our work in-house, we get a lot faster turnaround on the jobs that we do.
The whiteboards and the projectors have given teachers access to resources that they would not otherwise have in the classroom.
Well, we've got quite a lot of interactive whiteboards in the school now. I think we've got about 25 fully installed. Our first one we probably had about 5 years ago as an experiment, and we have looked to install them initially into departments where we thought they would get most use.
They can show video, they can go to websites, they can use all of the information that we keep on our curriculum network is available to them. So it has just opened up the classroom.
Okay, so now we're going to go into a maths lesson. These are Year 7 girls with our head of maths, Mrs. Cassells. She's using the interactive whiteboard to introduce the topic. So we'll go in and see what they're up to. We have got some teachers who are probably some of our lead teachers in using interactive whiteboard for a variety of uses and involving the children.
On the interactive whiteboard, I had a product which we found at the Bet Show a couple of years ago. My colleague thought it looked very interesting, and then the flyer came to school, and so we bought that. It's colourful, it's big, it's bold. I know you might laugh, but maths is thoroughly enjoyable and fun if some of the tedium can be taken out of it.
Using an interactive whiteboard has very definitely improved teaching and learning in my own classroom. I mean, you saw me use a program which involved animations, and it's much easier to demonstrate those animations and talk pupils through those animations, or better still get the pupils to talk you through the animation as a way of explaining things, than to try and use textbooks or diagrams or even video. With an animation which you can stop-start, have on the whole board, bring the pupils up to the front, get them to talk it through with you, get them to explain what happens, it makes that a lot easier. It often reduces the amount of time that you have to spend teaching that content as well, which is very useful.
We also have a lab of 30 laptop computers, which we wheel from one classroom to the next, and we use that as and when we need them.
Sometimes there is a bit of money that we find at the end of the year, and part of the laptops that we've currently put in place were funded from some carryover money. We've purchased this system of the wireless laptops with a trolley where they all go for recharging. There's 30 in the trolley, and at the end of each lesson they have to go back for recharging. But you'll see it's quite organised. The girls seem to, take to it like ducks to water quite intuitively. We think they're quite good value for money, the laptops. We haven't done a proper evaluation. I think once they've been running maybe for 6 months, we'll take a sample of staff and do a proper evaluation, and also ask some children what they think about them.
This is Mrs. Sugden, who is in charge of our integrated learning suite. This is a group of Year 7 students who are working their way through a literacy programme.
They've gone from their literacy, they're going to go into their numeracy now, they're going to do math concepts and skills, which is looking at identifying their weak and strong areas.
It's working at your own pace, and at the end of it they'll do a test, and the test will then show if there's been any gains. This was funded from our normal annual grant, and we renew it every 3 or 4 years, and the software licence is renewable annually. But the benefits of this system are that the gains that some of our lower ability students make are very, very rapid. So some of the students who come in here with really low reading scores are accelerated very, very rapidly, and normally in terms of half a year's reading age per term. So it's a really rapid growth in their reading and their literacy skills.
Will we have as many teachers in the future? Will we have more learning facilitators? Will we need the number of first-class teachers, or will we need an increasing number of education support staff, learning mentors, learning facilitators? So I think in that prioritisation, it's first of all about the philosophy.
Well, I think computers should be seen like biros or pens or books. They ought to be seen as an entitlement to an education that all pupils, particularly in a state comprehensive school like ours, should expect.
We're now developing the concept of thin client. We're working with some major corporate companies to perhaps be one of the first schools around the world to put thin clients across the whole network. We are seeking to have that data centred in Docklands, in New York. We don't care where it's data centred, but everything will be run over the web. We will therefore reduce the cost of the actual stations. We won't need the processing power, but we'll increase the numbers, and fundamentally we will deliver the personalised learning agenda set off by Charles Clarke and David Miliband, and we will be able to deliver that to our students, building their personal responsibility, building their self-reliance, building their capacity to learn for the future.
This is Teachers TV. You're watching the Secondary Zone. In 15 minutes, personalised learning with ICT2. But next, we look at handheld devices in personalised learning with ICT1.
To find out when your programmes are on Teachers TV, click on www.teachers.tv. You can view or download most programmes from the website and create your own personal schedule. There's also a wide range of support material on each subject. Teachers TV, what's on it for you?
There's something for everyone here on the General Zone.
Thou art a villain!
Programmes to make you think.
What's a nice chap like you taking on Ofsted for?
To inspire you.
Is the way forward for any school.
And to help you relax.
I have a head massage every week.
The General Zone on Teachers TV. For further details, check the website.
What part can ICT play in delivering personalised learning? This programme looks at 2 schools that are developing their ICT networks to directly benefit teaching and learning. At Cooper's Technology College in Kent, we focus on their delivery of content through a virtual learning environment. While at Seven Kings High School in East London, we see how they are exploiting the potential of management information data to enhance assessment for learning.
Tansy, Maura, Billy.
Both personalised learning and assessment for learning demand high-quality ICT support, because the ICT support not only gives the teachers the tools to look at children individually, but it also enables children to work far more independently than ever was possible in the past.
Ravine.
One of the ways they've been improving the quality of pupil data is by monitoring attendance through electronic registration.
Wesley.
Yes, miss.
Flynn.
Yes, miss.
We have electronic registration and it's been in for, what, about a year now?
Mayuri. Yes, miss. Jackie.
It just allows the teachers to use their laptops to register us. It also picks up on who should be in the class and where might they be.
What we've worked hard to do is improve the quality of the data and the target setting. So that data comes out. If it just sits in a cupboard or on a computer somewhere, no one looks at it, there's no point. So what we've done is we've improved the quality of it, but also improve the accessibility.
What it allows me to do is take 5 periods a day, 5 registers, electronically send the information to the office. If there are any discrepancies in absences or students not turning up from one lesson to another, it can be picked up straight away. It's also a good way of monitoring trends in absences and understand maybe why they're not turning up on certain days. As a head of year, I'm very concerned with attendance and punctuality. If they've been present at morning registration, present lesson 1 and 2, but they're missing lesson 3, then theoretically the system can throw up a warning to me saying this person was in but is now not. Where are they? And then I can follow that up quite quickly.
Obviously, I go to all of my lessons, so I'm not really bothered by it. It doesn't affect me, but obviously people who like truant and don't want to go to the lessons, then obviously they're going to be bothered by it, aren't they?
We've just quite recently got laptops. Every staff member has a laptop, and that has improved the communication between teachers immensely. So I get more information more quickly about incidents that have happened, about positive things which have happened, and I get that information very quickly coming to me wherever I am.
At Seven Kings, they have customised an off-the-shelf management information system to make it work for their particular vision of assessment for learning.
We looked at the existing management information systems and we couldn't quite find exactly what we wanted in the format we wanted. This whole personalised, and it is personalised access to information about children. We're very fortunate to have a technician at the school who was able to create the system based upon what was already there and just create an interface that accessed what was there.
Subject teachers like Nikki Difford use the system to set targets, keep records of assessment and prepare reports.
As a design technology teacher, how it works for me, the children do practical-based projects. They're learning a whole wide range of skills in there. So I will interview the children one by one and I will say to them, what skills have you developed so far as part of the course? Right, Jasmine, early into year 9, but what we're doing first of all is your interim report. That's due on November the 5th. Okay. And like we did last year, we're going to discuss all of the grades and all the criteria that you need to be given. I'll start recording it in their report now. Even though it's only November and the report doesn't go out till next March, it is very important that you sort of catch the moment live as it's happening. So what we've got here is student name, overall attainment, effort, homework, behaviour and presentation. So let's first of all talk about your behaviour in the classroom. On a rating of 1 to 4, what would you say your behaviour was? The way you work safely?
A 2.
This is a group project.
Yeah.
And you are being a little bit harsh on yourself.
Okay.
But I think you do work safely, and I think you are being a little bit critical, so your behaviour to me is 1. These interims are helping the children because they are consistently involved in the information that is being held about them. You can't hide information about a child away from them with regards to their progress, otherwise they're not going to learn and they're not going to develop their skills. Right, give me a target for food technology.
I could remember to bring my ingredients sometimes.
Okay. Bring the correct ingredients. Well done.
The key part of what we're trying to do is to give the teachers the information at point of need. So when they need to challenge that child to actually discuss with them the learning, they've got the information ready and available there. And that is so powerful, that immediacy and that information available at point of need.
Compared to a paper-based system, it's fantastic.
This school has a long tradition of talking to students about how they learn. What ICT has done is to make that so much easier and so much more meaningful. It adds a depth to those conversations.
Obviously, you've done very well in your SATs, in your Key Stage 3 SATs. Yeah, we're looking at 555, and you've done very well in your NFER scores. I don't know if Ms. Mills has talked to you about those yet.
No, not yet.
Right. What we use them for is to predict how well you're going to do later on in your Key Stage 3. My role is to draw together all those various different sources of information and to support the learning of a whole child rather than the learning of a child in a particular subject. A load of different information sources are brought together to give one document that condenses all that information that's available to teaching staff. And it draws on the comments of an academic coordinator, Year 7 NFER scores, Key Stage 2 SATs results, and it draws on some background information that we know about the kid. Tanzim, did you know that you're on the gifted and talented list? Has anyone spoken to you about that? Mr. Donetto, possibly?
Yeah.
He has?
Last year.
Right, last year. Well, you're still on it this year. It's quite, I won't say it's a compliment because I don't want it to go to your head particularly, but it's something that you should be bearing in the back of your mind, that you can be pushing yourself to achieve really very highly here. The more information I have, the better conversation I can have with that child, and the more focused and the more personalized really you can make that child's learning goals.
The next stage for us will be to structure it even further so that we can actually decide which bits can be seen by which students at which time. So when they dial in, they can actually see their latest assignments. Their parents will be able to dial in and see their assignments. They'll be able to look in at schemes of work and everything else. So that the whole virtual or managed learning environment, that will allow us to do that. So that's a big part of our future, I think, and that's where we're actually looking, exploring and talking to suppliers at the moment.
One school that is already exploring the potential of a virtual learning environment is Cooper's Technology College in Kent. They're working towards a system that can be accessed 24 hours a day by pupils, teachers and parents, and where the content is personalised to suit all learning styles and abilities.
We've invested very heavily into our digital plumbing, our computers, our systems. But once you've done that, that's very mechanical. It's about why have you done it. We've done it because we see that if you want to engage young children are engaged when the work is personal to them.
Our virtual learning environment is Class Server. Class Server itself has the student view and the teacher view. The student view is available across the internet, and when they first enter they would log in and see all the classes that they are currently assigned to. When they go into their class, they'll see any assignments that they've been sent by their teacher.
This is my page and it's Year 10 ABCE, and only people in my class can do it, only people in Year 10. If anyone else tried to log on, they couldn't get in. And every lesson, something's posted on here saying what we're going to do in the lesson.
I can set different pieces of work at different levels for different students in the class, and then they decide when and where they access that.
At the moment I've only got this one here, which is on the witchcraft. It says it here, when it's been given to you, how good it has to be and how many marks you can get. Once you go onto the actual page and do your work, you can save it and it will be sent straight to the teacher in a way like an email.
It's helped a lot. It's much easier than going home and getting out paperwork, and it's much more organised as well. With one click I can go and do a whole assignment.
Some students might prefer just to do it immediately on site and go to one of the facilities that we offer and do it in school hours. But the majority tend to go home and access it at home via the internet.
I have trouble writing because I'm slightly dyslexic, so it's a lot easier to go on to work that might be set on here because I've got the internet at home, so I can take it straight away from there, go and do this, answer the questions, send it off to the teacher, not worry about it.
And we've discovered that children actually are logging on and doing work at some bizarre times, which how adolescents work. You know, so you've got pieces of work returned at 2 o'clock in the morning. You've got a piece of work that's been released for a half-term holiday assignment, returned on a Sunday.
It's a 24-hour classroom. It really is available to them. We quite often get girls logging on early morning. Boys tend to be logging on late at night rather than early morning.
The teacher view is where they would create all their resources, edit them and assign them to classes or to individuals. It's where they would access assignments that have been sent back from students, where they would mark them, give them the feedback and then return them to the students when they're done.
As a science teacher, what I do is I use Class Server to be very specific to individual classes and their abilities. So I can set and create work which they can go home, go away on holiday, anywhere, and complete tasks that I've set them. As they're doing the rocks topic, they'll be asked to log on and read the information provided to produce a piece of work on different textures of rock. Once they've completed it, what's brilliant is this particular one, they get instant feedback on their marks, how well they've done. So they will log on at home, complete the task, and then it instantly marks it. I can bring up the marks that they've got, and I can look to see which questions they have right or wrong, and I can add my own comments about the quality of their work. As I'm creating these resources, though, I'm sharing them with other teachers, and they're doing the same.
Teachers have always said, wouldn't it be nice if we had this resource, that resource, this resource? But we've never been able to afford it. But digitally, you now can, because you can share.
The VLE has facilitated greater collaboration than paper resources and PowerPoint and interactive boards. And because of the nature of how the VLE works, all the resources are shared in the same place.
What we are doing with this group is we're setting up the work for a module which will last 2 or 3 weeks in its entirety. They will have all my lesson notes available as PowerPoints. All the exercises I would normally have given them in the classroom, they have available on screen. My major job is preparing the work, making sure that they can understand it, making sure that they've got work that they can do that gets marked. After that, my job in the classroom is to go around and help individuals. Okay, and then you can attempt that work at home. If you get stuck, you can email into me, or you can post a notice up on the discussion board.
We've actually found that if you add to a VLE a chat room, that people will put in there, help, and someone else will come in and say, this is how you do it, but not a teacher. And so you're actually developing in them some form of collaboration, student to student.
You can leave a message for someone and a teacher can respond to it with the, so if you ask a question then they can reply, or if you have a problem with an assignment then you can ask the question and see if anybody else has the problem and you can sort of collaborate and work together.
So what's the next step at Cooper's?
Our main concern is that the virtual learning environment was working independently of our management information system, and that, say, come a parent's evening or a report writing time, a lot of information was having to be recollated and presented, whereas the potential of the Learning Gateway, we hope, is to bring together the 3 layers of learning, the parents, staff and students, and really put students in the fore in terms of their ability to manage their own learning, rather than being led by staff and by parents.
All of these things are still in their infancy, and we've got to say that, and you still have these slight hiccups every now and again. But it's by working at it and having the conviction that that's the right approach, and also saying to parents, that's how we're doing it, because that's what you're seeing in your own world.
Rolling back the years with some golden oldies.
You won't find the ladies that don't like you unless you're sartorially elegant.
Teachers who've been making the grade for decades.
I started in 1944 when all the men were coming back from the war.
She's the best teacher.
I'm going slowly, it's my age.
With no sign of quitting.
She comes into the school and she's a breath of fresh air.
Carry on teaching on Teachers TV. For details, check the website.
Look at me, I'm smiling.
Early in 2004, Dudley Local Education Authority embarked on an ambitious pilot to investigate how handheld computers, or PDAs, might be used to enhance learning. The pilot came about as the result of a 5-year review of the authority's Grid for Learning project, during which 200 pupils were asked to feed back on their experiences of using ICT at school.
They don't want to take turns. They don't want a timetable. They actually want to make the decision when to use technology and what for. They expected and were demanding 100% flexibility of access 100% of the time. And we thought the only way that could be provided was by looking at handheld technologies. We're into phase 1 of the project, involving 8 schools and between 300, 350 devices. The devices we're using have been funded jointly by the local authority and by Palm, perhaps a 60-40 split.
The ambition is to extend the pilot into all schools in Dudley and to involve other PDA manufacturers. In this programme, we focus on 2 of the schools that are taking part in the first phase. Red Hill School, a mixed comprehensive in Stourbridge, and Mount Pleasant Primary School in Quarrybank.
The project began when the children were halfway through Year 5. All the children in the year group, that's 52, were given a Palm as their own personal property. They worked and developed their expertise around this at home and at school. They've now moved into Year 6 and the project has continued and the Palms have moved forward with them.
What we have done is we've established a single cohort of youngsters, around 70 in number, who spend the majority of their time together
in the core subjects.
Right, if you could get your palms out, please. Right, and switched on, yes?
And the groups that we've got are all together for English, maths, science and languages.
Bonjour la classe.
Bonjour, Monsieur Westwood.
Ça va?
It's difficult to evaluate a project so early in at this stage, with only about 6 months down the road, although we're already very aware of both a number of advantages and some significant problems as well. The big advantage has been that it has actually achieved its primary objective, and that is that the youngsters have had the capability in their hands anytime, anywhere.
Well, they're like a games machine. Yeah. They're like multifunctional, all-in-one tiny things. They're like, yeah, really good.
Initially, when the children had the palms, they were very excited. It was a new toy.
My animation is of a tree growing.
Gradually, they saw how it could involve their homework and how they could use it at school.
I think it's a great way of learning because it makes everything more interesting. The programs are interesting to use and you're learning why you're using them.
I've been making an animation for French, trying to show what sorts of activities I've done over the summer holidays. I think using PDAs in class is a good idea because it's more entertaining than just writing words down in the book, and it stops you from having a short attention span.
I've found that the animator is highly motivating. I'll get the pupils to get on with this, and a few of them are like, yes.
They do provide the children with an opportunity to use a multi-sensory, multi-tasking device at any time during that learning experience that they have through the school day. That allows each youngster then to decide when it is and when it's not appropriate to engage ICT.
Attraction is spelled the same as attractions in English.
Thank you.
Très bien. Okay. I'm wondering in the long term how this will continue to be motivating. Will they want much more sophisticated software like you could get on a full-size PC or on a laptop machine?
We can find software currently that will replicate things that we can currently do elsewhere, but we're looking now for people to develop software that will actually challenge the way in which youngsters learn. Without a shadow of a doubt, we need subject-specific software that can support and enhance what the children are doing in the classroom.
Once you have input an equation, it will then plot the graph of that equation. The main activity was to investigate the effect of changing variables and constants in equations and seeing what the graphs would look like. Yes, Josh?
I've managed to do the graph.
You've managed to do it. Would you just like to show me? Right, thank you. When you input the equation, I think you'll find that you need brackets around the power of x minus 1. Right, Josh, so if you would like to put brackets around the power and see what difference it makes to the graph that you produce. If I had done that in a normal classroom situation, it would have taken me an awful lot longer and the students a lot longer to actually arrive at the same point as we were in the lesson today.
What you do is you enter the equation into here, so that changes the direction of the line, so it's steep. But if I enter y equals 10x, then it gets even steeper.
Have you done them? Oh, then bring them up then. It's been a steep learning curve for me. I think the students probably pick up the technology a lot quicker than we do, and I have learned a lot from the students. And not there's anything wrong with that. I think that's a good way to learn. They don't seem to be frightened of anything. They will have a go. If they fail, it doesn't matter. They will have another go. So they're perhaps further ahead than I am on that respect. That's 16.
We're very interested in the potential of the technology for peer group teaching, where the child and the device actually teaches a group or the whole class.
Come and explain what you found in your group, please. Thank you.
And the child being a tutor or mentor for their parents, taking the technology home and teaching mum and dad how to use the technology and sharing what they've done back in school. I suppose the potential is that every evening could become a parents' evening.
This project has been really excellent in that parents have been allowed to be part of the project, that children have been excited to show their homework to parents.
My dad's willing to sit with me and let me teach him how they work, what I've got on it, and sometimes he has a go as well.
It's quite nice when they come home with something that they can show you that you don't know about. They get a good sense of reward from that, I think, from being able to be better at something than mum and dad are.
Well, I'm a complete novice with any sort of computer electronically, and I've just found it amazing that the things that she comes home and said, look at this, Mum.
You don't tend to get the same degree, same level of sharing with your child with a piece of pen and paper work as you do when they bring it home with this particular piece of equipment. They want to share with you instead of just saying, how was your day? Oh, fine. It's, look what I've done today, Mum, look what we've been doing in class, look at what I need to do next for my home learning.
With the PDAs, sometimes it's very good and it improves our relationship with the teachers because we can share our work more easily with them, and you can also share it with the whole class, but sometimes it doesn't always work out because if your PDA breaks, for example, you could get into a lot of trouble.
Certainly the robustness of some of the machines has been challenging. They need to be strong if young children are going to have them as part of their pencil case activity, which is really what we would like to feel they have, that it's another tool for them to use.
A big practical issue does arise from the fact that machines do break down, and the handhelds are no different to any other machine. The hardware was never designed to be passed around from one child to another, used as a sound system, and then the next minute as a communicator, and perhaps then onto the internet with it. And it's been challenged.
They can be a bit temperamental with, if you load some new software on, for example, it'll say this won't load on properly and you've got to reset your palm.
Sometimes they reset themselves when you're doing something, which is a bit annoying because sometimes it doesn't save it.
I did actually lose my charger the other day, so I had to use my friend's.
Sometimes it totally wipes out most of your programs.
If anything goes wrong with them, they've got a reset button at the back, so which will if it freezes, for example, all you need to do is get your stylus out and tap that button. It'll just start from the beginning as if you were rebooting a computer.
So long as it's controlled and so long as it's not the only method of teaching, then to do it in a lesson like this is good. To do it every lesson would be incorrect. We should still use our exercise books to record information and for them to create more developed and sophisticated work on the laptops.
Currently, the type of software that we have available that we can run through school and use in terms of laptops and desktops, that software is not all available yet for the use on PDAs.
The animation that I showed today was much more basic than an animation that the learner can create using much more developed software. So until these can have software that is as developed, that is as sophisticated, then it would be wrong to just use these.
We've still got a lot of work to do in terms of customizing and develop the actual solution. We are talking to a number of content and application developers to extend its functionality.
I think over a period of time, as the PDAs develop their capability and the software that goes with them becomes comparable to that on the laptop, then the pendulum of advantage will indeed swing to the PDA, because then you have a truly portable device, handheld, in your pocket, available to you anytime, any place.
The ambition and the vision is eventually for us to provide a handheld device for every teacher and every learner from Key Stage 2 upwards. So we're looking at 40,000 plus devices.
I think as a school that's been part of the pilot project, it's been very interesting to see how we might develop this concept throughout the school. Certainly in Key Stage 2, it would be very advantageous for children, every child, to have their own PDA.
I think that it's good if everyone has PDAs, because then you can send everyone stuff, like you can get everyone involved in working with the computers. If all the schools had PDAs, then it'd be much better, because instead of kids going to school and saying, oh, it's going to be really boring today, it could be fun.
To make the scheme affordable to every family across the authority, we need to set up an e-learning foundation. So we have advice and expertise from the foundation. I won't be looking at a parental contribution in the region of the cost of a packet of crisps a week to the cost of a pint of beer a week, to put it into perspective. Hopefully that would make a contribution towards lessening the digital divide and social divide issues, and perhaps seeing the device as the Trojan horse that actually takes learning into families and communities where there's been little or no tradition of learning.
There's a clear opportunity with the handheld devices to be able to move into new ways of enhancing learning in the classroom, and to allow the learner to take far more control of their own learning than they currently may do.
In terms of the government's personalised learning agenda, we think these kind of technologies have the potential to turn their agenda into reality, that a properly customised resource could actually identify the learner, know what the learner's good at, knows what they're not good at, and actually deliver an appropriate programme, appropriate to their needs and abilities and interests, and actually help to raise standards. We see the project as a natural part of the evolution of how teachers and learners record what they're doing, from Roman wax tablet to a Victorian slate to the piles of exercise books and textbooks people have. I only see it as a 21st century pencil case, and in 5 to 10 years' time they'll be commonplace and there won't be a fuss about them.
They're fun at home and at school, and I just think it's a brilliant idea.
Don't forget that all this week's programmes in the secondary zone are repeated in easy-to-recall blocks in Catch-Up Weekend.